You're listening to Audiology. Support this channel by becoming a member, and be sure to submit your requests for topics in the comments below. Federalist No. 2, written by John Jay, is the second essay in a collection called The Federalist Papers, which argued in favor of adopting the United States Constitution. Published on October 31, 1787, in the Independent Journal, a New York paper, this essay, like all in the series, was signed with the name Publius. In it, Jay lays the groundwork for what he believes is the true essence of American nationhood, emphasizing unity. Jay's argument pivots on the idea that Americans, despite their diverse backgrounds, are united by a shared culture and the advantages of their geography, a unity he suggests is ordained by Providence. This stands in contrast to the anti-federalists' view that America's differences were too great to allow for a single unified nation. Jay counters that the anti-federalists either misunderstand or don't care about the nation's well-being, focusing more on promoting unity rather than directly attacking his opponents. Notably, this essay is unique in the Federalist Papers for its mention of natural rights, a key concept from the American Revolution. The issues of nationality and unity Jay discussed in Federalist No. 2 have echoed throughout American history, influencing debates on naturalization and multiculturalism, and faced a significant challenge during the American Civil War, which tested the very idea of unity Jay championed. Jay kicks off with a key point: should the states stick together or go their separate ways? He highlights that unity has always been the popular choice until some politicians started questioning it. He then makes a strong case that everything from geography to culture suggests that the states were meant to be one country. He also points out that these states have a history of tackling major events, like the Revolution, and forming a government as a unified front. Next, Jay dives into how the states have been managed so far. He describes the initial government setup during a crisis, contrasting it with the more thoughtful and organized effort at the Constitutional Convention. The architects of this convention, he notes, were not only highly skilled, but driven by a genuine love for their country. Jay stresses the importance of not just blindly accepting or rejecting their plan, but giving it the careful consideration it deserves, similar to the discussions that followed the First Continental Congress. He underlines that the push toward unity has been a consistent theme in every Congress since then, reflecting the true desire of the people. Jay wraps up by warning that turning away from the proposed Constitution means turning away from unity. John Jay authored Federalist No. 2, and like the rest of the Federalist Papers, it was published under the pen name Publius. The goal behind these writings was to explain how the Constitution of the United States worked and to convince the people of New York to agree to it. This particular paper made its debut in the Independent Journal on October 31, 1787. Right after that, it appeared in the Daily Advertiser and the New York Packet over the next 2 days. Before this, only Federalist No. 1 had been published, serving primarily as an introduction to the series. Therefore, John Jay was given the assignment of starting the discussion on why thinking of ourselves as a single nation was a good idea in Federalist No. 2. At the time he wrote this essay, John Jay was considered the top expert on foreign policy in America. This background probably played a part in his choice to focus on the benefits of the states sticking together. Federalist No. 2 made some early and significant points about why the states should unite, going beyond just talking about safety and money matters. It suggested that Americans were basically one big family, sharing ancestors, languages, beliefs, and ways of life. The author Jay used ideas much like those political scientists use today to say what makes up a nation. He highlighted how the layout of the states and natural geography seemed to point towards them coming together, almost like it was meant to be. Jay also noted how the states had already been working well together, starting with the First Continental Congress, showing a pattern of successful collaboration. Jay saw the American Revolution's political thoughts and identity as a direct match with what the Federalists wanted. He kept emphasizing a point that would come up again in the Federalist Papers, that the people very much shared the same ideals, and there was a common goal guiding the United States. However, some of Jay's arguments stretched the truth a bit. He talked up the idea that Americans came from the same ethnic and religious background, which wasn't quite right given the mix of backgrounds and religions in colonial America. Plus, his idea of political togetherness didn't quite square with the fact that loyalists to the British were still around after the Revolution. But in Jay's eyes, what mattered more was the shared experience of colonial life, the Revolution, and what he saw as a shared future. In Federalist No. 2, Jay's portrayal of American unity was a bit overdone. Not all the colonies were represented at the First Continental Congress, and it wasn't exactly a people-powered decision on who was sent to these congresses. The state governments picked them. Before the Constitution was agreed upon, there wasn't much unity among state governments, and the ordinary person didn't have much of a say at the federal level. Jay's vision of nationhood was more about what he hoped to see rather than what was actually there at the time. In Federalist No. 2, a key message put forward in the Federalist Papers is highlighted: the notion that Americans, despite their differences, formed one national community united by shared interests, urging for unity. This concept directly counters the arguments made in the Anti-Federalist Papers, where it is argued that Americans are too diverse to come together as a single nation. Jay, specifically, took on the argument that different industries leading to different cultures actually strengthens the idea of a united nation by promoting interstate trade and enhancing a shared national identity. Jay addressed the Anti-Federalists' skepticism about federalism, pointing out that the idea had been widely accepted until recently without dispute. He critiqued the Anti-Federalists as politicians more interested in division than in unity, either pursuing their personal interests or not grasping the consequences of their stance. He likened their resistance to the Constitution to the Loyalists' opposition to independence during the Revolution. Jay also emphasized that the Articles of Confederation were inadequate for governance, having been crafted amid the chaos of war. He believed that the Constitutional Convention offered a more reflective and composed setting to ponder the nation's governance structure. Jay, along with Hamilton, saw the rejection of the Constitution as a path to disunity among states. While Anti-Federalists suggested tweaking the Articles of Confederation instead of outright rejection, the narrative pushed by the Federalist Papers, showcasing unity as pivotal, gained widespread acceptance. This approach by Jay often involved posing questions in such a way that his solutions seemed like the only logical response. In Federalist No. 2, John Jay adopts a more hopeful and gentle approach than what we saw in Federalist No. 1. While he discusses many of the same themes, he aims to bring people together rather than emphasizing his points with force. Unlike Alexander Hamilton's approach in the earlier essay, Jay doesn't directly attack his political rival. Instead, he talks about them in a way that's a bit more general and less confrontational, which helps him come across as someone who's trying to rise above the conflict, not add to it. Jay focuses on painting a picture of the states in harmony, suggesting such unity is desirable. When Jay considers the possibility of failure, his tone is one of sorrow, contrasting with Hamilton's more fiery response to opposition. By the end of his essay, Jay references a quote from William Shakespeare's Henry VIII, hinting at a dark future if disunity were to prevail, an ominous note that colors his contributions to the Federalist Papers. Jay views the Founding Fathers in an entirely positive light in this piece, clearly aiming to boost the ratification effort by showcasing his peers as competent and worthy leaders. He strongly believes that pure logic would lead everyone to support the Constitution, suggesting that the delegates at the Constitutional Convention were guided by such reasoning. Furthermore, Jay's writing leans towards a populist angle, valuing the opinion of the general populace over the preferences of state governments. Federalist No. 2 stands out as the only essay in the Federalist Papers that directly mentions natural rights. These rights are a key principle behind the Founding Fathers' philosophy and the Constitution. However, the essays generally skip detailed discussions of these rights to keep things simple and brief. In this paper, Jay touches on the idea that giving up some natural rights is part of the deal for having a working government. He seems to side with Alexander Hamilton and James Madison, who argued that during the American Revolution there was too much focus on liberty at the expense of effective governance. Jay believed in the necessity of government, but made a point that it was through the American Revolutionary War that Americans took control, deciding to govern themselves. This act of choosing their own government and forming a national identity reflects a deep engagement in shaping their future. The discussion about how rights and governance tie together didn't get much space in the later Federalist Papers. Those essays were more focused on what the government should do with its powers, rather than debating whether it should have these powers at all. The role of natural rights, as discussed in the Federalist Papers, was mainly about the right to revolution and to set up a government, with Federalist No. 2 not going much further than acknowledging this scope. In Federalist No. 2, the foundational assumptions that would shape the rest of the Federalist Papers were laid out. This piece was immediately followed by numbers 3, 4, and 5, all of which tackled the same topic. Later on, the notion of Americans being a singular people and the critical importance of unity were further explored. Hamilton revisited these themes in number 12, Madison in number 14, and Jay in number 64. The Naturalization Act of 1795 took the concept of an American national identity a step further, requiring that anyone applying for naturalization must be attached to the principles of the Constitution of the United States. However, this idea of national unity and uniformity would be tested by the American Civil War, highlighting deep divisions within the country. The debate over whether a single national identity is achievable and whether it can exist alongside a multicultural society has continued to be a contentious issue in American politics. Thanks for watching. Share your thoughts in the comments and subscribe for more content.